ओम श्री परमात्मने नमः। अथ नवमोऽध्यायः। श्री भगवानुवाच इदं तु ते गुह्यतमं प्रवक्ष्याम्यनसूयवे ज्ञानं विज्ञानसहितं यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे अशुभात्।
Yeah. So now Krishna is telling Arjun that I'm going to tell you a secret. And why am I going to tell you this secret? Why you? Because Anasuya way. He's using the word Anasuya way. You see, to get spiritual knowledge also, the recipient or the one who's going to receive the knowledge should have certain qualities in him. So Arjun is of that quality. He does not find fault, he does not complain. And so Krishna is going to tell him a secret. And the secret which he is going to tell him is going to release him from the bondage or is going to release him from evil. Moksha se ashubhat. And also, this secret can be directly experienced. It's not a dry philosophical statement or something he's going to tell him which he can't use or which he can't experience, but he can um, directly benefit out of that secret. So, this is what this verse is telling us. So, first, we have to become fit to know these secrets. And we have to have this quality of not complaining, of accepting things, of not finding fault. And then the secrets will be revealed to us.
राजविद्या राजगुह्यं पवित्रम् इदमुत्तमम् प्रत्यक्षावगमं धर्म्यं सुसुखं कर्तुम् अव्ययम्.
Yeah. So he's telling him that I am going to tell you a knowledge, a vidya, which is Raj, which is royal, which is kingly. And naturally, it is Raj. That means it has to be the highest, or the best, or the greatest. And it is the royal secret. It's a royal knowledge. It is pavitra. It is so pure. It is uttamam, excellent, the most excellent, highest. And it can be directly experienced, pratyaksha. And avgamam, that means it can be, um, known through intuition, through experience and through intuition. And then he says it's susukham. It is so easy. It's something which is so easy, which everybody can do. And it is very easy to perform, practice, and it is imperishable. It's an eternal secret. It's not a secret which is not going to be applicable after a certain period of time. It is eternal. So he's describing the secret with so many adjectives that naturally the listener is eager to know what is the secret after all, which Krishna is going to tell Arjun now. Arjun is all of us. So one is that Arjun has the qualities, and so he's going to receive the highest secret. So before we go on, Vinoba Bhave for this particular chapter, he says that whenever I talk about this chapter, tears well up in my eyes. It is so beautiful. And also that he says that I say this Bhagavad Gita or this chapter particularly to have the Lord's name on my lips. And he says if others want to benefit out of it, they can benefit, but it is particularly for me. So he describes this chapter in very high terms. And so we are going to, uh, so this is the way we have to approach the chapter. First of all, the mind has to be pure, uncomplaining, and ready to receive the knowledge, this highest knowledge. So, yeah. So we'll go on to the third verse.
अश्रद्धधाना पुरुष धर्मस्यास्य परन्तप अप्राप्यमान् मृत्यु संसारवत्मनि.
Yeah. So he says, Arjun, people having no faith in this dharma, failing to reach me, continue to revolve in the path of the world of birth and death. So he's immediately not sharing the secret. Now he's saying that people who have no faith, they will not benefit out of it. So the first quality, again, the next quality after not complaining is having faith. Faith is given a lot of importance because faith is the one which can give us peace, which can give us clarity, which can make the mind concentrate, which can make the mind receive the knowledge. And he says, so people without faith will not benefit out of it. They will keep revolving in this world of material world of birth and death, and they will keep returning to this world and they will never reach the highest. So shall we go on, or any questions, any thoughts?
We can go on, I think.
Yeah.
Maya tatamidam sarvan jagad avyaktamurtina matsthani sarva bhutani nachahan teshvavasthitaha.
Yeah, so it says that all this world, I'm not reading from this because this is a little different from the Gita Press. It says the whole of this universe is permeated by me as unmanifested divinity, like ice by water, and all beings dwell on the idea within me, but really speaking, I'm not present in them. So basically, it says that this whole world is permeated by me. God is there everywhere. But he says that all beings exist in me, but I do not exist in all beings. Why is that so? Why is that all beings exist in God, but God does not exist in all the beings? So he's making this statement over here. So why do we think that he's making this statement where he says that I do not dwell in the beings? Why is he not in us? Why are we in him? And why is he not in us? So the answer is that we are so full of many things, so many things of the material world, that there is no place for God in us. So he says, I don't exist in the beings because they don't want me to exist there. They are so full of my prakriti or of the material world that there is no place for me in them. There is so much of ego, there is so much of I sense, there is so much of the material that I don't exist in the beings, though they all exist in me. Then in the next verse, he makes another statement.
न च मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूतभावनः. I'll read that again. न च
Yes.
मत्स्थानि भूतानि पश्य मे योगमैश्वरम् भूतभृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूतभावनः.
So he's saying, no, all these beings abide not in me, but behold my wonderful power of my divine yoga. Though the sustainer and creator of all beings, myself in reality dwell not in those beings. He says, I am the creator of the beings. I am the sustainer also. And but I abide not in them. They don't exist in me. The beings don't exist in me. Though I support them, I am in them, I am the cause of all the beings, but they don't in reality exist in me. So he says it's like the potter is creating a pot. He creates, but he himself is not in the pot. He's a creator. So he's making himself distinct from the creation and himself. The creator and the creation are distinct. So we'll understand this better if we go to the next verse, and then maybe we'll discuss these.
यथाकाश स्थितो नित्यं वायुः सर्वत्र गो महान् तथा सर्वाणि भूतानि मत्स्थानि इति उपधारय.
Yeah. So he says, just as the extensive air, which is moving everywhere, ever remains in space or ether, likewise know that all beings abide in me, who have originated from me. Of course, all beings have originated from him. So all the beings rest in him. So there is space, and the wind moves in the space, and we too move in the Creator. This is what this verse says. So, how do we look at this? He says, just as the mighty wind is moving everywhere in space, so all the beings also rest in me. So, beings, we cannot rest without him. He's there everywhere. He's there everywhere. We are there because of him. We cannot sustain ourselves if he's not there. So, what Vinoba says, that God is not hiding in a river or under the sea or in some cave. He's there everywhere around us. Everywhere. We cannot exist without him. He's there everywhere. He's all pervading. He's there. So, can we feel the existence of God? So, this is just a question of awareness. Are we aware that there is God all around us, all the time? We exist in him. So before he's going to tell us the secret, he's telling us that, do you know that you abide in me? Are you aware of me all the time? Are you aware that you exist in me? I can also exist in you if you allow me to exist in you.
So, you see, there is a story, I'm sure all of us have heard it, about the emperor, who, when, constantly being reminded that, God is everywhere. And said, but look, I can't see God. So, how can you say that it's everywhere? It may not be a correct statement. Prove to me. So, all the Gyanis and Navratnas were a little stumped, kaise kiya jaye? So, anyway, next, I think a small boy offered to demonstrate this to the emperor, and nobody believed him. But then anyway, he was brought to the court next morning, and he said, okay, I, would like to have a glass of milk. I don't know if it's stated in Vinobaji's commentary also. But, can we have a glass of milk brought? So the glass of milk was duly brought. And so then he said, look, is this good milk? It is unadulterated milk. It's pure milk. He says, how dare your questions come from the royal kitchen? It is the, finest possible milk available in the kingdom. So, yes, it's absolutely pure. Okay. He said, so this, I'm not sure if there is any butter in this milk. He said, no, we've told you that this is the best milk. Butter is there. He says, how can you, how do you know, how are you so sure that there is butter? He says, we can churn it, and after churning, the butter will appear. So that's exactly what I want to tell you, that in our current ways of living and being, we are not able to see the presence of God. It's only when we are churned through, meditation or bhakti or the various ways of approaching the divine, that we are able to get to see Him. So, maybe as a latent presence, obviously, Lord is always there. And I feel it's good that, such a check is provided. Otherwise, we tend to very glibly, assume and believe and kind of go with the, statement that, yes, God is so, therefore, we need not be, concerned, and it's anyway a fact of life, etc. So it's good that he mentions that, look, I'm not necessarily present in all beings. And unless efforts are made to, know me, for all practical purposes, I'm not there in you.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah. It's so beautiful. You don't know what to say. So the example also we were given that we live in the material world and we cry over the little losses, and we rejoice over the little joys. And when we cry, we just cry. Do we think that there is God? It's like a little child. A little child is given some toys by his parents, and if the toys break, the child cries. But does the child think that all I have to do is approach my parents and they will replace the toy? But the child throws such a fit. So we don't remember God. We don't feel that He's the sustainer. He's the one who's going to take care of us. This is from a bhakti point of view. We are so involved in the material world all the time. Yes, so any other thoughts, or maybe we can go on to the next verse. These are verses which just have to be experienced. One has to reflect on them and come to certain conclusions or certain experiences by churning, as Sunilji rightly said, churning, meditating over these verses.
By my understanding,
Yeah.
that verse where Akash and Vayu are mentioned,
Yes.
Vayu cannot exist without Akash. But Vayu is not Akash. Is that what is meant?
Yeah.
Vayu cannot exist without Akash, but Vayu is not Akash.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like we said, the material world is distinct. The creator and the creation are distinct.
As also, the Akash can exist
Then-
without the Vayu.
Yeah. But then, if creator and creation are different, then doesn't it go against Advaita?
Yes, it does. So there are different philosophies. What is it that we want to?
Right.
Yes, sir. Actually, while on the surface it does, I think just, and if we scratch the surface a little, I feel, we scratch the surface a little, we find that more or less they're saying the same thing. Right. So, depending on the audience, which is why it is said that the Bhagavad Gita could be said not because the Lord, knew what to say, but because he had a Shishya such as Arjun, who was qualified enough, who was brilliant enough to be able to receive that. Christ did not have such a Shishya, because in his era and in his part of the world, people were Jews kind of not very evolved people. So also, Prophet Muhammad also did not have those kind of, followers. So, and not that they were aware of the truth any less than the Lord Krishna was. So what I'm saying is that if in Yoga and Sankhya we say that Purusha and Prakriti are different, and in Advait we say that they are actually there's no duality; it's all one, and at best it's all the sparks of that one same reality. Philosophically, yes, they have been portrayed as different stances, but if we start to approach our ascent towards the peak or the divine, there is virtually no difference.
True.
Right? I mean, Paramhans Madhavadas Ji, founder's guru, was a Bhakti yogi, so to say, right? But he knew so many Hatyo practices, which we are aware because he taught founder. He may have known yet more things. Right. So while we say that Bhakti Yoga and let's say Raj Yoga are different, or Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga are different, but when we approach, we have to do something for the body, we have to do something for the mind, and we're not qualified to speak about dimension beyond. So these, I feel, right or wrong, and I'm not at all claiming correctness, but I feel that these are these are paradigms which suit different intellects, but their essence, I feel, is not different.
Yeah, true. Mahendra ji, would you like to comment on this?
You pointed. Vinobaji was highly motivated by this chapter.
Yeah. Yes.
It appears something more has started, whatever has been said earlier. It appears also that the Sankhya, the Jnana, the Bhakti, the Karma could not motivate Arjuna. It appears. And therefore, now he has a new chapter start, and it says, I'm going to reveal the highest knowledge, the highest secret. The highest knowledge, highest secret. Now he's also telling that this is the simplest also to be adopted. Yeah, you can adopt it, you are fit to be adopted. So beginning with, he gives illustrations, 2 illustrations he gave, like air and water. Air and water, there's a difference. I'm sorry, that air and space are different, but air can't exist without a space. So the reality is again one. Otherwise, there is no question now. Reality is one again. If there is no space, it can't exist.
Exactly.
And similarly, is for the water and the ice. If there's no water, the ice can't exist. So what is example has been given just to distinguish that whatever exists, it exists because of me, but I'm not there. It means I myself sitting on the chair is occupying a space. If I leave the space is still there. If I am there, space is still there. So the space is there, but I'm not the space. Now this what a small distinction and clarification, I think, has been described here. And the second point is that whenever the Lord says me, or is ultimately talking about the reality. Me means real, the consciousness, that Purusha, the Ishvara, whatever you name about that. But he's talking about the truth. And the truth alone exists. Advait, you may call it because the real. And the other one is unreal. So therefore, you interpret in the way you like Dvaita or Advait. The examples have been given of air in space and the ice in water. I mean, I look at it in this.
Yeah, true. Absolutely true. Yeah. So basically, we have to be aware of the highest. So are we clear? And we go on to the next verse.
Yes. सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकाम् कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्.
Yeah. So now he's very specifically saying that all beings merge into my Prakriti. During the final dissolution, all beings enter my Prakriti. And at the beginning of creation, I send them forth again. So I am the creator. I decide whether the beings have to be there or not be there. Now he's using the word kalpa. And also this verse is telling us that everything in this universe is born at a certain time and it gradually disappears. Nothing is eternal. And who is the master of all this? There is one. Into him everything goes, and from him everything comes. And he's using the word kalpa. Kalpa is a broad spectrum of time. Our spectrum of time is a day, a night, a year, a month. He's talking about kalpa. Kalpa, which runs into almost an infinite. Of course, the numbers are given. It's not, the numbers are given, but if we think of it, it's too vast for us to fathom. The numbers of billions of years are given. So he says everything starts from me and ends with me, ends in me. So now where do we come from? Where do we go? These could be the questions in our mind. We come from him, we go back to him.
प्रकृतिं स्वाम् अवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्रामम् इमं कृत्स्नम् अवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात्.
So he says, taking hold of my prakriti or wielding my nature, I procreate again and again according to their respective karmas, all this multitude of beings subject to the sway of their own nature. So the universe is governed by this larger process, and we can call this God. It's a supreme power, and all the products of this power, they function helplessly. So he's using the word avashtabhaya. I am the Lord, I animate the Prakriti, I am the master, and Prakriti follows my rules and regulations. So we are all helpless.
Incidentally, another story, which famous story, which kind of illustrates this, the fact that we all come from an unmanifest, is that from, of course, all of us have heard multiple times, the one from the Chandogya Upanishad about the sage Uddalak. Since his son asks, Swetaketu asks, what is the ultimate, I want to learn about God, etc. So he says, okay, there's an Nigro tree. You please get a fruit from the tree. Here it is, sir. Break it. What do you find? Sir, small seeds. So break the seed. What do you find? Sir, there is absolutely nothing. He says, yes, it appears to be nothing, but remember, this whole big Nigro tree has arisen from this nothingness. So in a similar way, all of us, come from this nothingness. And I think all of us go back to it. And remember that you are that Tattvamasi. So I think very simple but very powerful, fact rooted in our experience,
Yeah.
which indicates that we cannot assign. It cannot be approached with the intellect. The ultimate.
And this story, I mean, the whole incident which is described in the Upanishad is that Shvetaketu is coming after 12 years of learning. And then his father is asking him that what is that one thing which pervades everything? And he has no answer after all of that. So this is something we have to experience, which we have to really study deeply, understand deeply. Just a superficial knowledge is not going to lead us anywhere. Then he's asking him also to get a glass of water and salt.
Right.
And he says it's all pervading. It's there. Yes, so correct. So Prakriti, the laws of Prakriti are there, and Prakriti functions according to its own laws. We are, of course, a part of Prakriti. We are under the laws, so we are helpless. But yes, it's not that there is, no escape. Though the laws are binding us, we can turn towards the one source, towards the creator, and come out of this and understand the difference and come out of this wheel of birth or death, as he says, or understand the difference between the Prakriti and Purusha. So we can read the next verse.
न च मां लक्ष्यमान्तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनम् असक्तं तेषु कर्मसु.
Yeah, it's such a nice verse. So it's Arjun, those actions, however, do not bind me. Unattached as I am to such actions, myself standing apart, as it were. Udasinavad. Standing, or here it would be asinam. I'm sitting indifferent. So this is the advice. This is how we have to function in life. Standing apart. God is the creator, He is the boss, but He stands apart and He allows His creation to function. He does not interfere. So last time, Sabir Bhai was talking about Sakshi Bhav, being a witness. And I was just discussing this with one young boy, around 35 years, and he is some marketing head in a multinational company. So I asked him that, what would you say on this non-interference? He said, once a job is assigned, we don't go into the nitty-gritty. We don't micromanage and tell the person this is how it should be done and that is how it should be done, unless it's very necessary. But one assigns the job and then one allows that person to use his own mind and intellect and do his, come up with his own ideas. So the question is that standing apart in all areas of life, is it possible? That would be the right way to function, though, according to this verse. Otherwise, there would be chaos. So, what are our comments on this?
Sorry, I'm speaking too much today.
No, it's.
But but just that I've been mulling over it. So I mean, these few days. See, again, it's a really when we translate this, the standing apart, and I'm saying this since you asked another person. A lot of जो भ्रांति arise होती है, वो कई बार इससे होती है how you regard yourself, how you look at yourself, how do you identify with yourself. So very often we think that अरे ये हम body को withdraw कर लेते हैं, हम कर्म नहीं करेंगे, stand apart कर गए. And actually the reverse is the truth, because हमारा मन जो होता है वो उसके अंदर already बड़ा curious होता है.
Right.
और फिर केवल body को withdraw करते हैं.
Yeah.
What's it done exactly the opposite? You involve, the physical into what is being done, but the deeper element, right? Let that remain tatastha. Knowing that obviously laws of nature are applying to whatever is kind of happening, and also because everything is connected, so there are hundreds and thousands of forces. So the final outcome is determined only by the ultimate. So the tatastha at the level of, let's say, the heart or intellect, but action at the level of the body is probably what is being recommended.
True. Yes. Yes. Very rightly said that mentally you have to distance yourself. Emotionally. And this is where this is going to head. Where do the emotions, where they need something to hold on to? So we will learn that. Where do the emotions go then? So to fix them, you don't have to allow them to wander or interfere. So the emotions will rest in God. This is where He will come to. Yeah. So any other thoughts on this idea of being neutral, on being indifferent, on being a witness, on standing apart, and yet doing the work, not getting too involved, doing one's bit, but keeping apart, standing apart. It's so easy to get involved in things because we create the things around us according to us. He's used two words, udasinavad and asaktam, unattached. Okay, so any thoughts? Do you have to say, Ashutosh sir, do you want to say something?
No, I have nothing on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he says that the karma don't bind me because I stand apart.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So the central principle, God is neutral. This is what this verse is saying. Okay. So shall we move on or any other thoughts?
Yeah.
Indra ji, आपको कुछ कहना है?
We can move.
Yeah. Okay. Vinoba has one sentence. He says, dedicate everything to him and be free of it. Okay. So we'll move on to the next verse.
Right.
10. Yeah.
Maya Dhakshena Prakritis Suyate Sacharacharam Hetunanena Kaunteya Jagad Viparivartate.
Yeah. It says, under my guidance or under my aegis, as the word is given here, nature brings forth the whole creation, consisting of both sentient and insentient beings. It is due to this cause that the wheel of samsara is going around. Jagad, the world goes on, viparivartate, revolves, because I make it go around. It's under my guidance. I am the supervisor. I am the adhyaksh. I am the one who presides over Prakriti, and under my guidance or under my supervision, Prakriti produces the moving and the unmoving things in the world. I am the cause, and there is no other cause. He says, by this cause alone, the world revolves. So, Ishvara, God, or Ishwar, or whatever we call it, is the one who's directly supervising this creation. It is because of him that this creation is in existence. And yet he stands apart, he's non-judgmental, he stands apart, he's a witness. So can we be like that? Can we just develop these qualities of accepting things, of standing apart, of being non-judgmental? And everything around us is him. So these are verses which one has to really ruminate upon. Yes, sir, you want to say something, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, in the galaxy,
Yeah,
as far as we know today, in the solar system, that is, only Earth has life,
right.
as far as we know,
Yeah,
and other planets do not have life.
correct. Yeah,
So there is a if we take this verse, then this Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam, nature brings forth the whole creation. So that
Right.
nature is limited to Earth.
yeah, because we don't know.
Yeah.
If we come to know,
Hmm.
then maybe we can expand it. Yeah, but since the time the Gita is written, since 5,000 years, we know only of life on earth. We have
Right.
the moon, have we reached Mars? We've reached some other planet also, but we have not reached those places.
Right.
Maybe in the next 1,000 years or how many ever 1,000 years. He said
In the
Kalpa,
next
Yuga.
Kalpa, yeah, Kalpa.
Yeah, he's talking about Kalpa, Yuga. Time is so
Right.
vast. We are in this frame of time where we have experience of the past,
Right.
but we don't have the experience of the future, and we cannot fathom what is going to happen in the future. So yeah,
So no. Now the question is moon a part of Prakriti or not?
yes, it would be. The sun is a part of Prakriti, right?
Okay.
So the moon has to be, because the moon derives its light from the sun. We are able to see it because of the sun.
So the whole cosmos in that sense would be Prakriti. Whole cosmos would be
Should be,
Prakriti.
or
Yeah.
what we know, yes.
Known galaxies, whatever
Yeah.
are the known galaxies.
Whatever are the known galaxies, yeah. Yes.
And then Jagad here is meant, by Jagad is meant Sansara.
Yes.
And the translation, Jagat is
Yeah.
meant translated as Sansar. And Prakriti is translated as nature.
Hmm. So the world around us.
Right.
Hmm. See, whatever we can see, we can understand with our five senses and the mind, or with the 10 senses and the mind. Whatever is manifest to us, that is what we can understand. But God is supposed to be beyond the senses, beyond the mind. So it's a matter of experience. At the beginning of this chapter, he says, this is a secret which I'm going to tell you, which you can directly experience. So we don't know because we have not experienced. So as of now, people have gone to the moon, but maybe we are living in 2020. Maybe 1,000 years back, people would not have known of life, of, they would not have imagined that somebody could have gone to the moon.
Right.
So we don't know what's going to happen in the next millennium or millennia.
No, I'm only looking at this Prakriti Suyate Sacharacharam. That means both sentient and insentient beings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you say, this is in the context of what was known 5,000 years ago.
Right.
Right.
We are going by what Vyas is telling us.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe we can go to the next verse.
Right. Avajananti mam mudha manushim tanumashritam param bhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshwaram.
So he says that fools disregard me, not knowing my supreme nature. Fools deride me, the overlord of the entire creation, who have assumed the human form. That is to say, they take me, who have appeared in human form through my Yog Maya, for deliverance of the world as an ordinary mortal. Now, the translation is gone a little bit over.
Right.
So basically, he's saying that fools disregard me when I dwell in human form, and they don't know my higher nature, be the great Lord of all beings. Now, how can we take this verse? Now, ordinary people would talk of limited existence of God as being born as Krishna for a finite number of years, God as being Ram in Hinduism, God as being Jesus. All those entities, all those forms who are worshipped today as God are subject to birth and death. But now he's talking about somebody who is the Lord of beings, of everything that is born. being the Lord of beings. So how do we reach this understanding about God as being the Lord of beings and not being limited to form, not being subject to birth and death? Can we accept that God is everywhere, responsible for everything? So we don't know him. We don't, and also it could be that fools disregard me in human form. All life is basically him, and we disregard creation, we disregard people around us, creation around us, beings around us. Everything emanates from him. He's the highest, and we are not aware of it. Mahendra, sir, you want to say something?
We are dealing with a very limited subject of yoga, where self has to be identified with the supreme self. So therefore, to that extent, something has been said here. We are not setting our knowledge beyond creation.
Yeah.
So at points he has given that I'm responsible for the creation, entire creation, whatever, and a lot has been described about the creation elsewhere.
Yes.
That is not the topic here. Not the topic here. Number one. And second thing, when God comes in a form, manifests, he exhibits that form in the best possible way. He could have avoided Mahabharata if he was a god.
Yes.
But he behaved like a human being.
Yeah.
A different type of a little working on a higher plane. He did it.
Yeah.
So if he is talking about the person that those who consider me only to that limit that the Krishna was born in Mahabharata time.
Yeah.
He alone is the God.
Yeah.
That is a limited explanation.
Correct.
That is only an example. And since he has also a principle to follow, whatever is fit or exists or whatever suits for that life, because human being.
To meet certain needs.
Yes.
To
See,
meet
he has
certain
taken
needs of that time.
Yes, he has taken 10 forms, so many forms also.
Yeah.
And therefore, in that form, he exhibited those qualities only.
Correct.
These are just illustrations. That's what he wants. The I should, or the consciousness should not be limited to that extent only. This is much, much, much more beyond, and some interpretations are being given here in the text here.
Correct.
I think that's what.
True. So he himself is born to meet certain needs of society at that particular time.
Yes.
But he is beyond all of that. This is
Beyond
how
that,
this
yes.
verse means.
Yes.
Yeah. Shall we go on, sir? Or any thoughts on this? Any questions?
Of course, in the beginning itself, you have said that because Arjuna is not asking any questions, then carping nature, carping spirit. Therefore, I am going to tell. And now it is very clear why questions cannot be asked, because on the face of it, verse 11 goes contrary to verse 4.
Okay.
मया ततमिदं सर्वं जगदव्यक्तमूर्तिना मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि न चाहं ते श्वस्थितः.
Yeah.
Then how can I adopt a human form? Because I am not there in the Bhutani.
Yeah.
न चाहं ते श्वस्थितः. And then when somebody claims that God has come in human form, and those who ask questions are termed as mudha. Avajananti mam mudha. Manushim tanumashritam. Param bhavam ajananto. Mama bhuta maheshwaram.
Yes.
You can ask questions, but you can't complain. He says,
No, I'm not.
he's not saying don't ask questions.
You
He's
can't
used for
complain.
Prashnena in this.
No.
So,
So suddenly I don't know how this verse 11 has appeared. Of course, it's a very famous verse. Avajananti mam mudha, manushim tanumashritam.
yeah.
Yeah.
So God can be formed. So that's his Leela. He can be born in a human form also. I don't know how.
But na chahan tesh vavastitha. I'm not existing in them. So this is an exception. It would be an exception when I come in human form.
Valid point.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of Semitic influence here. The Semitic religions influence or Semitic philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was at the time of Vedas, and people were going through a kind of a transition from one stage to another. Like Duryodhan was there, the war was being fought, and so maybe these verses came about. I'll think about it.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah.
I don't know if he comes in the present point and says that I am God or I am Krishna. What is going to happen in his fate in the present time?
Right.
So I think this is where distinction is required between him and his form. His form, as we call it.
Yeah.
That's what Sagun and Nirgun bhaktis have come. You understand, worship in certain form, don't worship in certain a fixed form. But in a deeper differentiation in the form and the non-form has to be understood by all of us.
He is going to explain this in 9.15. Not explain,
correct.
he's going to just mention it. Yeah.
Even in chapter 10 also he has given lot of illustrations.
Yes.
I am such, I am such, I am such, I am
Yeah.
such. But
Yeah.
again, these are all illustrations only. Illustrations. And totality is not there. Now, totality he wants to distinguish from the limitations. 1 or 2 or the 3 or the 4. Now, this clarity is required perhaps, all of us. Anyway, as we proceed, I think it will become
clearer on this, yes.
Yes.
So we'll read 9.12.
Moghacha mogha karmano mogha jnana vichetasah rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shritaha.
Yeah, so he says those bewildered persons with vain hopes, moga asha, moga karma, futile actions, fruitless knowledge, have adopted a fiendish, demonic, and delusive nature. He's talking about Mohini Prakriti, which deludes us, which is deceitful, which is delusive, which is illusory. And so he's talking about Rakshas and Asurim. So people who are tamasic and who are given to cruelty, and people who are asuras, who are victims of greed and desire, ambition. All these are under the sway of Prakriti, and they cannot see me by form. And then the next verse, he's talking about the divine Prakriti. So we'll read these two verses and then we'll discuss them. 9.13. Mahatmanastu.
Sir, you're on mute.
Sir, yeah.
महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजन्त्यनन्यमनसो ज्ञात्वा भूतादिम् अव्ययम्.
Yeah. So he said, on the other hand, Arjun, great souls, the Mahatma, who are imbued with divine nature, knowing me as the prime source of all beings and the imperishable, eternal, worship me constantly with one pointedness of mind. So there are two types of people who know him and who don't know him, who are deluded by Prakriti and who are understand and not come under the illusion of Prakriti. So he says they worship me and they have taken refuge in me and they bhajanti ananya manas, with a mind which is devoted to nothing else. And they understand that I am the source of beings, I am the source of everything, I am the source of creation, I am the source of the forms which I take. And I am perishable. So there are two types of mindsets. So now, sir, what do you have to say, Ashutosh, sir?
So the two types of Prakriti are being described now. Prakriti can be Daivi, Prakriti can be Mohini.
Correct.
Yeah, and these terms Rakshasi and Asuri.
Yeah.
Historically, they refer to the Assyrians. At the time of Mahabharata war, the different tribes of Aryans were involved.
Huh.
And this migration was taking place all the time. So the Assyrians were later on termed as Asurs. Asura. And this term Mohini is very closely linked to Samudra Manthan.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually in the Samudra Manthan, it is the Devas who take the form of Mohini.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they try to entice the Asuras through the dance of the Mohini.
Yeah.
So Prakriti would Mohini Prakriti would mean material attractions.
Correct. Yeah.
And Daivi Prakriti would mean Prakriti only, but which can go beyond material attraction. Yeah. So it's a very very peculiar thing about Prakriti. It can become Mohini or it can become Daivi.
Yeah, and gods are aware of it, and the asuras are like they get under the illusion.
Actually, if you go by the story of Samudra Manthan, it is the Devas who get attracted to the material possession
of the nectar.
But they don't want to share it with the Asuras.
They don't want to share it with the Asuras.
They don't want to share it with the Asuras. But that is another story. That is another story. Yeah.
True. So the Devas are also. We had narrated this story of Daya, Daman, and Dan.
Right.
So for the gods, it's Daman, control. Though they want everything, but they are advised because through control, they don't mind to be swayed or deluded. Though you enjoy, but keep your mind apart. Don't allow to be swayed or clouded by the practice. So in that respect, they remain as devas. The asuras stay to the delusion. Yeah. So this is what. So we'll go to
Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrataha नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते.
So he's constantly chanting my names, Kirti, like Lord, constantly chanting my names and glories and striving for my going again and again. Those devotees of firm resolve, ever united with me through meditation, worship me with single-minded devotion. So he a lot of adjectives here. He says Satatam Kirtiyanto. Always glorifying me, striving, Drudavrata, firm vows. We had come across this word Drudavrata in chapter 7 also. And he says they are constantly prostrating before me. They are devotees, Nitya Yukta, they worship me. So worship comes in forms. You chant his name, you sing his glories, but you do it constantly. And here in this, there is no going back. You're firm, Dhrida, and you're constant, Nitya, and Satatam, always. So if you are constantly with the thought of God, that means you're constantly aware of his presence. That awareness principle doesn't leave you. You're always aware of his presence. He's describing those devotees. So Vinoba said that the secret is chanting the name of God. That is the sense of the Vedas. That is what we have. He says through that you will reach the highest. That is the royal road, the Rajguhyam, whatever he's describing. The royal path is chanting his name. That's it. So this is the secret of this chapter. Always chanting his name and glorifying him. Always remembering him. Anyway, you discuss about him, you talk about him, you worship him, you chant his name, you sing his glories. That's all. एक बार हमको डॉक्टर साहब ने होमवर्क दिया था. Talk to each other. Talk to each other about God. Talk about God. Talk about. So there was this lady who was living in Bangalore, and every Sunday she used to call me and she used to ask me, Dr. साहब ने आज क्या बोला? So I said, उन्होंने कहा है कि भगवान के बारे में बात करिए. So she said, okay, can I call you every day and talk about God for 10-15 minutes? So I said, okay, we'll talk about God. So how do I say no to her? So then for a week or so, she called me every single day and she was given to a lot of this bhajan kirtan and reading the Srimad Bhagavad. So it was a nice time to talk to her about God. Anyway. Shall we move on, or do we have to talk about God for a few minutes? We move on, sir. So do we believe in this, that chanting his name is the easiest way of knowing him, which can lead us to other and understanding about the world?
Yeah. So that can that is a good way of constantly being aware.
Because at
Otherwise, during our morning practice, many times we are told pay attention to the breathing, become aware of the breath. All three teachers of ours tell us, observe the breath, be with the breath, become aware.
Yeah.
That is also possible, but chanting, I think, is a little easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Vinoba says that if milk and sugar can cure the disease, why take neem juice or Karela juice? Yeah. So at the end of this chapter, to Sukham, it's the easiest way.
Right.
So always chanting his name, glorifying him, thinking of him, it's the easiest way of being aware. Yeah.
ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो माम् उपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम्.
Yes. He says, others who follow the path of knowledge betake themselves to me through the yajna of knowledge, worshipping my absolute formless aspect as one with themselves, while still others worship me in my universal form in many ways, taking me to be diverse in many fold celestial forms. So we can worship God as one or as many. Where Vishwato Mukham. So now various ways are given. Bhakti Yoga, and now he's talking about Gyan. Understanding him, knowing him. But yet he uses the word upas, worship. They worship him. They know. They behind the many. He's one also, he's many also, he's everywhere. It is on all sides. So the constantly worshipping him, constantly being aware of him. So how do we see God as one or many? Or the one in many, or the many in one? And the point is worshipping something higher than ourselves. We are not the be all and end all of the world. There is something higher than us. There is some power. Through any way, we have to reach him. So, as Ashutosh sir rightly said, being aware of the breath, being aware of a form, being aware in any way, but being aware of a reality which is higher than us, from which everything. So that there are different forms. We are living in this universe, as we just spoke about, this world or the earth which we are aware of. And in this earth, in our life, of the many gods, we are aware of the sun, the moon, the earth, the sky. These are also all gods, and people worship them. So we can worship him in any way. Again, the point is that worshiping him as something higher than ourselves. There is a higher power, a supreme power. That's all.
I think worshipping in different forms, again, are techniques, simple techniques.
Exactly. Techniques.
He,
Yeah.
he has used the word ekatven, my universal form.
Yeah.
Ekatven. The same ekatven is being worshipped by different people.
People.
Vishwato Mukham.
Yeah.
By different people in different forms. You concentrate anywhere, but
Yeah.
I is to exist in ekatven, only one. So it's just a simple technique. One technique, you worship this way, that way, that way. Chanting is also way that has been said here. But this all must precede belief.
Of course. Yeah.
Unless faith is there. Once the faith, the belief
That is what he said.
exists,
Yeah.
then you can proceed on. Then you can proceed on through these paths. If there is a doubt about ekatvan, it will not lead to the right path.
With that in 9.3. Ashraddadana. Purush dharmasya parantapa aprapya mam nivartante mrityu sansara vartamani. The people who have no faith, they will keep returning.
Yes.
The people who have faith will reach that ultimate form, the one, through any path. We are doing our practices, we observe him through our breath, we see him in a physical form, we see him as Krishna, as Ram, or anything, as any form, we see him in anything. We chant his name. Yeah.
Annam Brahman.
Yeah.
The Anya has been described to be a Brahma.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah,
and then this,
absolutely. So the story goes that this little boy goes to a teacher
yes, yes.
to understand, and that he tells him, wait, first let us eat food. Then he goes to the market, he buys the vegetables, comes home, cleans the vegetables, and cooks food. And then the child tells him, okay, now tell me about God. He's saying, all this time, what was I doing? God. Cooking the food is God, eating the food is God, everything is God. Every
Now that concept is needed a cultivation,
yeah.
a constant cultivation.
Yeah.
That is required. I think that message has been given off
Yeah.
and on in
Yeah.
these readings.
And so many words he's used in 9.14, Satatam, Yatanta, Dhrudyavrata,
Yes.
and Nitya Yukta,
Yes.
Nitya Satatam, all the time, at every moment, being aware of him. And slowly that bhakti develops. One may start mechanically, and one goes on deepening one's faith and one's intent, and then it just gets onto you. Like we do the morning practices, and slowly they're becoming a part of us. So I think we should end it here because it's 9:12, and then anyway, if we do the other verse, we will be halfway through it. So we have 3 minutes. We finish 15 verses. So this chapter 9, with this chapter 9, we are going to be finishing half of the Bhagavad Gita. And Vinoba Bhave talks, as I said, talks very highly of this chapter. He says it is at the center of the Gita. And he said it's a secret which everyone can practice. So any other thoughts on this?
And even in terms of pace, Ashutosh sir, going back to the German professor's teaching, we are now exactly back. We are, as we are approaching the halfway mark, we also temporarily also approaching the halfway mark, right? So,
Yeah.
our faith in that professor's philosophy has once again been validated.
Okay.
Also, you see, in psychology, there is a very simple, whatever we pay attention to grows.
Yes.
So Namsmaran or all these forms of kind of remembering God are nothing but ways of paying attention to Him, and that therefore that realization of God will begin, grow in our personality,
Correct. Yeah.
like it or not. As a matter of fact, it is just bound to happen.
Yeah.
जिस चीज के ऊपर अटेंड करते हैं वो हमारे.
Yeah. So basically, this was set in the period of the Vedas where there was a lot of ritualism and a lot of eligibility for reaching God. A lot of prayers and paths and a lot of things to be followed. Like we are doing in the Hatha Yoga, we are, a lot of things, diet and so many things to be followed to purify the mind. But he says that this one path will purify the mind. Just repeat the name of God. And in this chapter itself, he says everybody can do it. Earlier, women were not allowed, or Shudras were not allowed. Only Brahmins could reach God doing various yagnas or rituals. But he says with this, he has laid the path open for everybody. Wherever you are, you can adopt this path and reach